This is the Whimsy Farm Podcast. I'm Carolyn Crane.
There's a big wide world right out your door. Good people doing good things. Whoa, it's a big wide world. Now is the time. Now is our time.
Welcome, everyone, to episode 26 of the podcast. The month of May is Utah Phillips month here on the pod, since he was born on the 15th and left us on the 23rd of May. On this episode, we welcome Mark Ross, a dear friend of Utah's. We'll also spend time with Utah's younger son, Brendan Phillips. We'll hear some Utah birthday stories and trivia, and also discuss Brendan's ambitious project that involves turning a caboose into a library. First, we welcome Mark Ross. How are you, sir?
As I say in Scandinavia, up and not crying.
And smiling.
For the moment.
Oh, I wore this for you and for the day.
What is it? It's a wobbly pin?
Yeah, I joined.
Oh, congratulations. Welcome, fellow worker.
Thank you, fellow worker.
And
welcome to the Whimsy Farm Podcast.
Yes. Utah's birthday is coming up next week, isn't it?
Yeah, it's May 15th, which is the day this goes live.
Okay.
And
I'm remembering 30 years ago going down to Nevada City from Butte for Utah's birthday. And I showed up with a special birthday present for him. We were going to do a benefit for, I think it was for the South Yuba Coalition. And I knew they were going to present him with a birthday cake. And I said, I've got a present for him. And the lady in charge said, what is it? I said, it's an anatomically correct inflatable sheep.
Male or female?
Female, of course.
Well, isn't sheep either? And it's either a ewe or a ram. A sheep could be either.
It was something I bought at the adult shop.
I see.
And she looked at me a little askance and said, "You're going to do what?" I said, "Wait a minute. You're giving him a birthday cake in the shape of a moose turd pie." I don't know what Utah did with it. He had a fondness for weird stuff. You know about his whoopee cushion.
Oh, yes.
The electronic whoopee
yes.
cushion. Yeah. Did I tell you what he did to me with it? It was a
you tell me, and then I'll tell you what Jim Fleming's story about.
I know Fleming's story. Yeah. Yeah. Well, it was the Winterfolk concert, a benefit for Sisters of the Road up in Portland, and I was going to do a short 3 songs following Kevin Burke, the Irish fiddler, and just before Utah. And I said, well, to make things easy, I'll just use Utah's stage setup, so you don't have to, to make the change real easy. Unbeknownst to me, he'd had Duncan, who was road managing him. He had Duncan place the device under my chair, and Utah stood behind the curtain with the remote, punctuating my stories with the sounds of gastric distress. I had to assure the audience I hadn't had Mexican food before the show. It was awful. It was awful. I know what he did to Jim at his birthday party.
I thought it was his wedding.
It
It
was a
was his
wedding,
wedding
yeah.
reception.
But Jim stood up to say, I'd like to thank everybody here from the bottom of my, and Utah hit the button and went, right. Both Jim and I vowed revenge.
It created some tension in the early moments of his marriage.
Yeah, I'm sure it did. Yeah, Jim and I both vowed revenge, and I never got the opportunity to pull it off, but Duncan told me that doing nothing was the perfect revenge because Bruce would get incredibly nervous when I was around, thinking of what I could do to him.
Do you remember the first time you spent his birthday with him?
No, I think that was the first time I was with him on his birthday.
With the U incident.
With the anatomically correct inflatable sheep. That was the first.
Now, did he inflate it in your presence?
No, he didn't. Whether he ever did or not, I don't know. But it was a good laugh. It was a good laugh. I told you what happened on my birthday when I was down there one year.
Tell me again.
Well, Joanna made this wonderful dinner, and we were all there. It was Morgan Bell and Brendan were there, and Bruce was eulogizing our friendship. He went on and on and on, about it. And after he finished, Brendan looked up and said, "Yeah, and I liked your book in the Bible too."
We're going to hear from Brendan later this hour. That's a funny story.
Yeah. You know the story. You know the story about how Brendan got his name?
No, tell me that story.
Well, I called Utah after Brendan was born to congratulate him. I was in Wichita, Kansas. I said, congratulations on having another son. They said, what are you going to name him? And Bruce said, well, we're going to keep him around for a while, see what he's like. I said, well, are there any names in contention? He said, yeah, we're going to name the kid Panama. I said, Panama, why? He said, well, he had trouble negotiating the canal. He was born by cesarean.
I do remember that now. He was never at a loss for a quip, that Utah.
No, he wasn't. I mean, after when he called me to tell me that when we talked about his retirement, when he announced that he was going to retire, I said, hey, I called him up and I said, well, how you feeling? He says, well, I'm doing better than Larry Craig. I'm holding my own.
Yeah, he had a very good attitude.
Well,
he did so well too.
The week before he died, I called him and asked how he was feeling. He said suicidal. I said, oh? He said, yeah, I called the crisis line. They outsource everything these days. I found myself talking to somebody in Pakistan when I told him I was suicidal. He asked, can you drive a truck?
That would have been about the time this airs, because he died on the 23rd.
Yeah.
And I want to say to the listeners and viewers who may not know that Mark, you are one of Utah's most long-standing friends. You met him in the very early days of Greenwich Village.
Well, it was the late days of Greenwich Village. It was the tail end.
I mean, the early days of Utah being in Greenwich Village.
Yes, it was her first appearance there. It was November of 1969. I was running lights and sound, and I was the permanent third act on the bill at the Gaslight Cafe, and he came in to do a guest set. And, I introduced him, put him on stage, and I was leaving the bar, to head for the Kettle of Fish bar next door, when this large, meaty paw grabbed my shoulder and forced me down into a booth and said, you listen to this man. And I remember the first song I heard him sing was Pie in the Sky, Preacher and the Slave.
Who was the paw? Who was the meaty paw?
It was a guy named Tex Koenig. Um,
And he'd
and
already heard Utah.
oh yeah, yeah. Tex was about 6'4", weighed around 280 pounds.
So when he told you to sit down, you sat
Well,
down.
I didn't have much choice. I mean, he was, 150 pounds heavier than me.
So did you have any idea when you were first hearing Utah sing Pie in the Sky and watching him that this incredible friendship was about to unfold? Did you feel
No, it
any
was.
chemistry?
It was. We sat and drank a couple of times in the kettle, which I vaguely remember. And then the next year, I went off to California. My wife and I hitchhiked across country, and when I came back to New York in '72, we ran into each other again. And
Up in Saratoga,
yeah,
Saratoga
well, no,
Springs?
it was in
Yeah.
New York City. It was he was doing a concert in South Street Seaport. He was playing with Salt Brody at that time. Have you talked to Brody?
Oh, lots. Yeah.
Oh, good. Yeah, he was playing with Brody, and then that was spring, and it was Labor Day '72. He was doing a Labor Day concert down at the Battery in New York City with Gene Ritchie and Oscar Brandt. And I went down there that day, and that's where our friendship really started to coalesce.
So you're talking Labor Day, May Day, Labor Day.
No, Labor Day was
Labor
September.
Day, September
Yeah,
Labor Day. Okay.
yeah. And he was going. He was about a week later. He was going to Britain. He was going to do a tour in England.
He went with Dakota Dave Hull and
And Nancy Katz.
yes, yes. They
Yeah,
toured
and
England and part of Scotland.
yeah,
A lot of people don't know that. Yeah, he didn't like England that much. He didn't like the food.
yeah. Well, he didn't like one of the gigs he had. I remember it was some club where they were. Everybody was trying to dress up like the Old West. I guess he got booked as a country singer or something. He wasn't happy about that. But the weekend before he left for England, he was playing at Cafe Lena. I had to go to D.C. to do some stuff for the People's Bicentennial Commission, and I got enough money to take the bus up to Saratoga and showed up having no idea where to find Bruce. I just knew he was somewhere in Saratoga. And I went to the cafe, not the cafe, but there was a little restaurant run by this Phil Shapiro, I think his name was. He had worked for Lucky Luciano and Meyer Lansky up in Saratoga. And he was right. He and his family, his sons had the Executive, which was the deli and bar, and he had this little breakfast joint. And I showed up in there trying to figure out how to find Utah. And finally, Lena came in for breakfast, and we got the information. I had to go and wait for Phillips to wake up. He immediately said, well, Jim Ringer's recording down in Sharon, Connecticut. Come on. Which is how Ringer ended up recording my song, Bill Pickett, because he needed an up-tempo tune for the recording, for the record. Went down there for a couple of days to listen to Ringer record. Gave him the song. And then Al McKinney and I hitchhiked back to Saratoga from Sharon and got there in time for this huge party because a whole bunch of people had showed up. So many performers, people in the crew showed up that Utah was only playing one set, and he was running a hootenanny for the second, putting everybody on. Problem was Saturday, we started off with a a concert for McGovern in Congress Park. We got there, and Utah had a gallon jug of Richard's Wild Irish Rose, and then Ringer showed up. He and Mary McCaslin showed up with a $50 check for a royalty check for me from Folk Lethargy Records, which Utah and Ringer and I proceeded to drink up fairly quickly. And things went downhill from there.
And now, is this the reason why you weren't welcome back in that town for quite a while?
I didn't dare show my face for another 6 months after that weekend.
Mm-hmm.
It was
Yeah.
quite drunk out. I wasn't the only one.
Yeah, Ringer and Phillips had some wild times.
Oh yeah.
So this was a couple years before everything happened with Philo Records, and later on in the program, we'll hear from the founders of Philo Records.
It was just about the same time.
Yeah.
Because his first Philo album came out the next year. Came out in '73.
Yeah, but if Ringer went to Connecticut to record, it's because Philo wasn't happening yet. Yeah. So it was right around that time.
Yeah.
So that brings me to one of the reasons I'm talking to Brendan is that we'll hear from the founders of Philo who tell us the actual arrival of the flanger car on the farm and what it was like. And that was a huge moment in Utah's life as well. And did you ever visit the flanger?
I was supposed to go up to help him fix it up, but he had called me at the last moment and told me not to show up for some reason. So I didn't.
So have you ever seen it?
Oh yeah, I've seen it since it's been moved. I've been down at Black Butte.
It's exciting what Brendan's doing, and I'm looking forward to sharing more of that later. And I just want to thank you so much for joining my birthday party here.
Oh, sure. My pleasure. Yeah, I've been spending a lot of time down at 7th and Pearl here in Eugene in front of the Federal Building with a upside down American flag on my hat.
Oh, that reminds me of Ammon. He used to pick it outside the Federal Building in Salt Lake.
Yeah, well, there's a bunch of us. I usually go down on Mondays with the Stand with the Veterans for Peace. Did you know that the Veterans for Peace chapter in Ann Arbor is named for Utah?
No, I did not. Okay, I will look into that.
Yeah, but so so about a week ago, I was on my way down there with my upside down flag on my fedora, and a cameraman from the local TV station stopped me because it was just they put up this fence around the Federal Building, and there was a big to-do about it. The people going to the city council and saying that, you can't let them do this. And the city council saying, well, it's the federal government. We can't interfere. If they want a permit, we'll have to give them a permit. And they managed to put up the fence. And the cameraman said, what do you think about the fence? And I said, well, it'll give us some place to hang our signs. What I wish is that Utah was still around to be commenting on this stuff.
Yeah, me too. He'd be 91.
Are you going into anything about Utah's interest in Egyptology?
Do you have anything to say about that?
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, it was winter of '76, I think. He came to New York to do to be part of a concert for Sing Out with Pete Seeger and Michael Cooney and a bunch of other people. And when he got in, he called me up and invited me and my girlfriend up to the Metropolitan Museum of Art to look at the Egyptian collection. Except we got there and the part he wanted to see wasn't open. But they did have an exhibition of bas reliefs. We went through there with him telling us what was wrong with the museum's translations of the hieroglyphics. Then we went through parts of the other museum, and my girlfriend was an art history major from NYU, and he was telling her stuff about the paintings that she hadn't learned in class.
All from hanging out in the library.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
supposedly, when the King Tut exhibit came to Chicago, Utah was invited to give the guided tour, and the curator from Cairo, who was there, only corrected his pronunciation. At least that's how Bruce told the story.
I've been speaking with Mark Ross, who was a dear friend of Utah's. Before we welcome Utah's son Brendan, I wanted to share a video I made about a project he's working on in Northern California. Hello, everyone. I'm Carolyn Crane, and for the last 2 years, I've been researching and writing about the life and lore of Bruce Utah Phillips. Many things were important to Utah: social justice, the environment, peace activism, the power of the union, the power of the folk song. One iconic image tied all these together. That image is the train. Trains were important to Utah for his entire life. When he was only 5 and his mother was a fashion model for Higbee Brothers in Cleveland, he and his big brother Dave would sneak out of the dressing room where they were supposed to be waiting while their mother was on the runway. They'd make their way down to the basement of Terminal Towers where the big trains came in. Utah would go down to the head end of one of the big passenger trains just to be enveloped in the cloud of warm steam. 10 years or so later, one summer during high school in Salt Lake City, teenager Bruce hopped a freight to Yellowstone for seasonal work. He left that August with money in his pocket and the moniker he'd ride to fame, given to him by a coworker, Utah Phillips. 25 years later, Utah found himself a rising star based out of Cafe Lena in Saratoga Springs, New York. He was one of several musicians who founded the Wildflower Collective, an organization that would make booking gigs and making a living a bit easier for folk singers. The collective soon found Philo Records in Vermont. Mike Couture and Bill Schubart were co-owners, and Bill was the sound engineer.
And Mike and I knew that our job was not to hire producers to make saleable products out of musicians, but to help them realize their vision for what they wanted to sound like. And that was a big issue for Bruce. And frankly, it was a huge challenge for us because in the first album, when he talked about who he was and what he cared about, the one thing that sort of came to us was maybe we should simply build Bruce into a train on his record. So that first album, has all those O. Winston Link photographs and, all the original sound effects. And I got to tell you, I mean, that was a hellacious challenge, mixing his music in with the sound of all these trains. But it's really what Bruce had in mind and what he wanted, and he was ecstatic. He was thrilled with it.
Good, though, Utah's breakthrough album, was released in 1974. One hit on the record was Moose Turd Pie, which played extensively on AM radio. Utah went on to record 3 more records at Philo. He spent so much time there that he decided to create a place to live, a place near the recording barn that afforded him necessary solitude. Meet the flanger car.
I used to wake up in the morning there in the shadow of Mount Philo in rural Vermont, up there south of Burlington, in a railroad caboose, actually a scraper car, a large railroad caboose I had bought off of Vermont Central Railroad for $500, put it on 50 feet of track. They're graded. We had a grading party, and we laid the track down, and they craned off the big scraper car and put it down there. I had a Coley LeMay wood stove in there, and a big iron bed, and a jar of water. There was no electricity in the place. Had a hand-cranked Sonora Victrola with old Enrico Caruso records, and it was totally, you're so far away from any roads. It was out in the middle of a pasture. On the side of it was the big monad, said, Great Moncton Ridge, Saratoga, Salt Lake, and Pacific Railroad, all 50 feet of it. When I'd wake up and look out my window, I'd see a big barn at the other side of the meadow. The barn. That was the home of Philo Records. To drive by on that dirt road, Spear Road Extension, you wouldn't know that there was a beautiful recording studio in there, an enormous cavernous place, and that had become the home of traditional music, but all kinds of folk music. Not only music from the deep well of our people's tradition, but music of singer-songwriters who had tapped that tradition and were creating songs that could conceivably flow back into it.
Bruce said, Bruce was the group of folk musicians in Saratoga were called the Wildflower Collective, and there was a very strong sense of, I would say communard, not really a commune, but that sense that they were a community. And Bruce wanted to move as much as he could of that up to Philo. And he said, I need a place to live. And the next thing we know, he said, I bought a flanger car in Swanton, Vermont. To which we said, what's a flanger car? And he explained it to us. And, Mike and I can explain that. The difference between that and a caboose. It looks like a caboose, so everybody called it a caboose. But it's actually a very sophisticated piece of equipment that is pulled behind a train that cleans the steel rails with huge hydraulics inside and carborundum shoes that are pushed down and remove any rust from the rails. Anyway, we said, well, that's great, but how the hell are you going to get it here? And he said, I've worked it all out. The next thing we know, a few days later, there's some workers out in the meadow laying track, literally putting down ties and rails and hammering spikes in, and laying, I don't know, what was it, Mike, maybe 30, 40 feet of track, 50 feet?
Probably.
Like
It was, I think it was one length of track, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah. So that goes. Then the next thing we know, Bruce says, well, it's coming. And we lived on the other side of a covered bridge. So this couldn't go through a covered bridge, either from a height or a weight standpoint. So the thing came around a bunch of dirt roads and then came up the driveway. The first thing we saw was a gigantic crane. The second thing was a gigantic flatbed with two rail trucks on it. Trucks is the term for the wheel assemblies. There was no car. So they drive down into the meadow. The crane lifts these huge steel trucks off and puts them on the track, lines them up, goes away. And then the next day, same thing, comes back. The crane is still there, and this gigantic, looked like a caboose, just the wood part comes down on a flatbed. They lift that up, set it over onto the trucks. These guys align it so everything fits together. And then everybody looks at it, and we're all standing out there along with half the neighborhood, stunned at what we're seeing. And Bruce paid for all this. And then the crane drove off, and that was how the, as it was called, the caboose got there.
Time passed. Philo Records closed its doors. The Wildflower Collective scattered on the wind, and Utah moved to the West Coast. The flanger car sat on the Vermont field for decades, slowly decomposing. In 2016, 8 years after Utah's death, his older son Duncan, the subject of Utah's hit Daddy, What's a Train, discovered that the flanger was for sale. He negotiated a donation instead and raised funds to move the car across country to the Blackfeet Center for Railroad Culture in Weed, California. Now, 10 years later, Utah's younger son Brendan is leading the campaign to transform the flanger into the Utah Phillips Library, a sanctuary for artists, musicians, and scholars to steep themselves in the long memory. In these unprecedented times we live in, it's more important than ever to stand up for truth and to speak truth to power. Utah's life and work embodied these principles. It's also time to focus on the rebuild of what do we want our new world to be comprised? Equity, justice, yes, and also laughter, music, grassroots momentum, wholesome food grown in healthy soil. Utah stood for these things too. Thanks to Duncan and Brendan, the change agents guiding us into our future will have a library to visit, a haven where they can soak up Utah's wisdom and run with it. For more information and to donate to the cause, click the link. You can find the link to support the project in my show notes. There's other information there as well about the project. Now let's welcome Brendan, who I caught up with on the banks of the Sacramento River. Hi, how is the fishing?
Oh, one fish has been caught. So, but just, catch and release. We're not taking anything. But it was about an 18-inch rainbow trout. It was nice.
Oh, that is nice. Beautiful. Beautiful. So I'm doing this podcast. It streams on your dad's birthday. I think it would be his 91st birthday. And so I wanted to check in with you about your dad's birthday, if you have any special memories. And also, of course, you're in the middle of a really big project right now that I want to talk about as well. So does any birthday memories jump out at you, Brenda?
Birthday memories, my dad's birthday. I would just say in general, my dad he had this really bad taste in sandwiches. And I remember on his birthday, he would always make a liverwurst, honey, and banana sandwich on whole wheat. And liverwurst is the worst. It really is. And he would eat these sandwiches. Mostly, I just know that these times of year, starting around now and right around his birthday and going through August were, big times for touring and being at festivals and getting out. So there wasn't a lot of birthdays that I can recall. He would be gone a lot on his birthday. So, but I do remember he would have this birthday sandwich. Yeah,
Do you think he really liked it, or was it for shock value?
No, he really liked it. I mean, he'd have them occasionally at other junctures along the way, but it was really just for shock value. I mean, it was really for his own taste. It wasn't really for shock value.
Wow. I don't think I will try that. I think that my dedication as a researcher has reached its limit.
Yes. Yeah.
Did you ever try it?
No. I never tried it. I'd stuck with PB&Js.
Okay, well, I'm going to challenge anyone in the audience, if they try it, to let us know.
I will say that my dad was a huge baseball fan, so his birthday was always right at the beginning of the baseball season. So maybe we would go to an Indians game, which was the local team in Spokane, the AAA affiliate, the minor league team. I think they're an affiliate for the Colorado Rockies now. But yeah, they were out there at the fairgrounds. There might have always been a game on tap during this time that might be considered part of his birthday. Do remember those early spring games with him at the park in the stands, eating peanuts and whatnot.
Oh, that's a sweet memory. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
So I know you've been really busy on the train project. I wanted to talk to you about what's so important to you about this project. And I also would like to give a little more background to the organization that's housing the flanger car and your work with that organization.
Yeah, that's a great plan. Yeah, where to begin? Like you said, you'll talk a little bit about or have a video that shows a little bit about how the thing got to the Black Butte Center. But the Black Butte Center, we'll start there because the Black Butte Center for Railroad Culture, and this is really on my mind right now because I've been asked to like write a letter that my dad's old manager Jim Fleming is going to send to some people that are really important for this project in terms of not only are they going to be excited to hear about it, but could result in more donations coming in. So those are concurrent and equally important things for me. So he's asked me to craft a story about what this is. And the more I think about it, the more I'm like, you can look at the video online that we created. You can learn about it on the GoFundMe page. You'll show some stuff about it, but it doesn't do justice to what you're actually looking at when you're there. And when you get to the Black Butte Center, which is about a mile off of Vista Drive, Weed, California, coming over the Siskiyou Summit there, and you kind of go off on this dirt road that's jointly owned by the Black Butte Center and the Union Pacific Railroad Company. And you got to go through a gate, and it's a straight shot, and it's just about a mile off the road, the main truck stop there. And then you're sitting in about a good acre of old train cars, a boxcar that they've converted into a music venue, a boxcar that is a major zine library, like hobo literature, literature about the trains, about all sorts of different environmental topics. So it's its own library, a big metalworking and wood shop, a Pullman car that they recently brought out, the Shasta car that they're restoring. They have tracks laid. There are a number of other cabooses that are of various vintage, ranging from the 1880s to the 1940s. And then tucked away in the back is my dad's flanger car, and it got out there in 2017. And when you get there, you roll along it used to be an old I don't know, a dump or something, because there's lots of colored glass all over the ground, but it's not sharp. It doesn't hurt you. But you can kind of walk down to park by the flanger car. And then when you get in it, you're sitting in this beautiful old 1890s caboose. And when my dad and my mom owned it when it was in Vermont, my mom essentially made these benches that hang by chains that are affixed to the wall, and you can climb up on the bench, and she put a glass top table in the cupola, so you can sit across from a partner, and you're in the cupola, and you can have your coffee in the morning sitting there. And then right outside the window is this majestic Mount Shasta, giant, right there. And right off to the south is the Black Butte, which is this giant pile of black rocks that I think is essentially it came out of the top of Shasta and crashed down there when it blew off some million years ago. And so you get to there and you get to sit in this car, and the environment and the community there are just extra special. It's a group of people who are committed to preserving train riding culture, creating community that's safe for people from all different kinds of backgrounds and persuasions. And really extremely skilled people come through there. And a lot of these folks are, they eschew the modern sort of value of family and white picket fence and whatnot. So they're even though they're skilled craftsmen, they're traveling on the trains, going from job to job, and parlaying their skills into just enough to get on down the road. And they know about the Black Butte Center, so they come annually or semi-annually or whatever to be there. And so you're surrounded by this interesting community of eclectic folks who travel on the trains, and some of the people who just stay there at the Black Butte Center, like Bruce and Ron and others who are sort of fixtures of the place. So it's just an extra special environment to be in, and they've got their heads screwed on straight, as my dad would say. They know exactly the importance of the history of trains and the history of organizing and labor and migrant populations moving around the country to during the heyday of the train. So you're right on the UP track. So pretty regularly a train's going to come by and blow off its horn and its whistle, and Sometimes there's a siding there, so sometimes the train will stop and cars will come off of it, and the engine will move forward, the signals that the Amtrak's coming, so it gets the high ball, and the other train has to pull over to the side. So there's all sorts of interesting going ons, like amidst this place, and so we moved it there, and there the flanger has sat since 2017, and now it's time to give it its new life, bringing that caboose back to life and making sure it's safe and can last up there. It's a pretty harsh environment. So that's
So
the
I
Blackbeard
know
Center.
it's so important to me and you and so many other people who loved Utah that this flanger be restored and be of the service it's going to be as a library for others,
Hmm.
for scholars and activists. But it also, I feel, knowing what I know about your dad, that the work that the Black Butte Center does to preserve the railroad culture that could so easily be forgotten in today's short-term memory environment. The work they do, I think he'd be more excited about the help you're bringing to them than restoring his own car.
I think you're absolutely right on that. Like the car is almost, yeah, in up there where my dad is, he's looking down and excited that it has a new life amongst in this particular community, and with that the particular mission that they have. It definitely wouldn't be the same anywhere else for sure.
And
It's an added dimension.
I know some of the GoFundMe, some of the money that you're raising is dedicated specifically to improving the infrastructure of the center itself, right?
Yeah, so I mean, after we get through, about half the money we're raising, the 30,000, that would be 30,000, is going to really make sure that the thing is completely solid. It's got a solid envelope with no leaking going on. Everything about it will be able to be as climate controlled as possible on the interior, so that we can put these valuable things inside of it. Um, but yes, the once we get to the second phase of redoing the interior, part of the vision is to make sure that there's a water source at the flanger for people who want to come and visit, and that there's actual high voltage electricity. Right now there's low voltage coming off a solar panel, and we'll expand that system to bring a more high voltage electricity. When we do that, we'll be able to trench along a line of trees that will bring power to some of the caretakers that live out there. So right now, if you're a caretaker, someone who's coming through to tend to the place in the off season or whatnot, you'd have to walk many hundreds of yards to the little house that they have next to the track, where the outdoor kitchen is and stuff, to actually plug in or get water. So this will bring a fair good improvement to the lives of the people who actually live there. And there's not many that live there year round, but there are people who do come and volunteer to caretake, and they get to stay in these really tiny homes that have been built by people before them, in the trees, and they are tree forts and ramshackles built out of pallets. And it's true. It's like an Ewok village of sorts. It's for those who are Return of the Jedi fans. I mean, it's like it's so amazing what some of these folks have done, and putting these little tiny structures out there. And they don't live in them year round. They're not meant for that, but for people to stay in temporarily and to have a nice little spot, they're pretty special places. So yeah, that's the plan, is to improve the lives of the whole center by expanding some of the solar capacity on the flanger side of the property.
And it seems to me that the center is doing what really nobody else is doing on the West Coast by preserving this culture and creating this safe space and safe haven for contemporary train culture. And it's really important work.
Yeah, I would say the same thing. Yeah, I don't know if there's other spots. There very well might be whistle stops out there that other people know about that are in. This just happens to be the one I've come to know, and I do believe it's one of the most well thought out and well run, and because it's a nonprofit of its own, of course, and a lot of its projects, not only do they do train car, but they're doing habitat restoration on the property. So they get grants from the Forest Service and other things to do clearing and stream and seasonal stream sort of maintenance. I would need someone from the center to describe all of that, but they do have a component that works really on tending to the land and bringing it back to its original, trying to bring it back to its close, because it, of course, was all timbered at some point. It was all clear cut, I'm sure. But so they're trying to thin it out and restore some of the natural habitat that was there at one point.
So I'll ask you before we go if there's anything else you want to say, and I also want to make sure we get where people can reach out for more information, and I'll
Yeah.
put that on the show notes as well.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's just as I started with this sort of clarity on the space, on the environment that you're in. I want to make sure everyone has clarity on what is going in there. So when my father, as you know, as you did all your research, he was a huge fan of libraries, going all the way back to when he was a little kid, when he would run from the bullies to be in the library, and the librarians would give him things to do and fill his day. He Some people think he had a photographic memory, and he would be able to read volumes and volumes and retain amazing amounts of information. He researched Ethiopia, Egyptology, Celtic ruins, language, everything you could imagine. It wasn't just labor, trains, and activism. He was a full-on scholar of many topics, and so he collected all those books. So this car will be that collection. um, and in addition to that will be some amazing artifacts I've collected. And when I think about the library, I don't think about it as a memorial to my dad. It's a place of action, of contemplation, and of coordination, and to use the work to add to the long memory. So we will be running an artist in residency program, so people can petition to come and be there and reside there for the purpose of using the materials for research to bring to be something, whether it's music and stories and songs, or some sort of activism that they're trying to figure out about the past and labor, or whatever it might be. So the library will be an space of action for people, and we'll host events there. And the library items that I've retained, I really want to go for the feel of, like, you walk in and it looks, I've seen all my dad's libraries growing up. I want it to look like he's there. So my dad wouldn't put pictures up of himself all over. So it'll be the artifacts, the people he's been with, all of this stuff that's coming out of his existing library in Nevada City, and then stuff that I've collected over the years. And it won't be a museum. It's going to be, you're going to go in and just instantly, like, what book is where? How can I read that? What is this about? So it's going to be really special. I think it'll be a really special place. And, John McCutcheon, who's teamed up with us on this effort and has been really pushing it on the folk channels, in his way, he hit the nail on the head. Like, the Walter Reuther Library in Detroit, Michigan hosts my dad's labor library, and you can go to that library and check out a
I've
box.
been there so many
Yeah,
times.
you can sit there and pull these things out, but that's a sterile environment for a researcher that we would normally think of as a university. This is a true living community, and there won't be any, you will be able to go there and be there, and it'll be like an immersive research experience. Like, you're not just there, to like read a book. You're there because the community's coming through, the trains are rolling through. You never know when there's a campfire that's going to have a bunch of songs sung. You never know when a punk show is going to show up at the venue. There's so much going on. It's a very vibrant community. So I'm super excited to see, who takes to this project, and who ends up coming there and creating things that contribute to the long memory.
I'm excited too, Brendan. I'm so grateful to you for taking this on. I know it's a big project, and you have a busy family man. You're busy with your career, helping the homeless in Nevada County. So
Yeah.
thank you for doing this too, and answering the call. And we will keep up with it here on the podcast and on my social media channels. And and I'll post in the show notes how people can get a hold of you. But do you want to just give it a shout out here too?
Sure. It's GoFundMe, and you can just Google on the GoFundMe site, the Utah Phillips Library. I bet if you just Googled that, you'd get the GoFundMe immediately. But if you go to the GoFundMe main page and you look for the Utah Phillips Library, you'll find the site. It's the only one up. And there's a video on there to look at and learn more about the project, and sign on to get all the posts. We got a wonderful kid, Dusty the Kid, who's a train writer and a musician himself, who's created all this amazing art and stuff that's kind of come from my dad's collection. So a lot of the things you see that he's manipulated to fit onto Instagram, Facebook, all these other places that we're going, those are all coming from artifacts that will show up at the library in their original form. So it's a cool thing that he's plugged in all that way. That, I'm not the guy who can run a social media campaign. He's much more savvy at it. So all that stuff is there. And please, anyone who wants to join this campaign, donate. If you just want to follow it and see what happens and eventually be a visitor, let us know. We'll host you.
Okay, thank you, Brendan. I'll let you get back to the fishing trip. And
Thank you
thanks for
very
taking
much.
time out to talk. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, bye.
Bye. Thanks to Mark Ross and Brendan Phillips for joining me today to celebrate the birthday of Utah Phillips. Please see my show notes for the link to the GoFundMe for Utah's library and other information about the project. This podcast is produced on the sacred ancestral land of the Anishinaabe people. Thanks to the California band Castle House for writing and performing our music. The Whimsy Farm podcast airs the 1st and 15th of each month on our YouTube channel, Carolyn Crane and Whimsy Farm, and wherever you find your favorite podcasts. Thanks to our underwriters, Just Play Productions and Cannabis, and to our paid Patreon members for their support of today's podcast. If you'd like to offer your support, please visit my website, whimsyfarm.net, and click the Patreon link to find a level of support that's right for you. There is also a free membership level. You can email me through the website, as well as access all links to past and current episodes. That's whimsyfarm.net. Until we meet again, remember the words of Utah Phillips, who said, "Too many good people are doing too many good things to afford me the luxury of being pessimistic." Get out there and create some positive change. Stay safe, everyone.
whimsyfarms.net